you don't mind, please silence your cell phones and find your seats. Welcome to the Research and Internship Symposium. This event is a culmination of students' incredible experiences throughout the summer made accessible through resources from the college. It's so exciting to hear their reflections on oftentimes life-changing opportunities. I'm Sarah Fillman, Assistant Director for Employer Relations in the Career Center, and I manage the Summer Internship Funding Program, and I'm joined by my colleague, Lisa Schwartz, Assistant Director of Grants, Research, and Fellowships, who manages SCORE, the Summer Collaborative Research Program, and we are privileged to be the stewards of these resources for students. I'm honored for this next introduction. Dr. Manya Whitaker is President of Colorado College. Initially appointed to a 2-year interim presidency on July 1st, 2024, she was formally appointed as president by the Board of Trustees in June 2025. Dr. Whitaker is also a professor of education, developmental educational psychologist, and author of 4 books and 20+ book chapters and articles focused on her research. She came to CC as a Riley Scholar over 14 years ago and has held numerous roles, including Executive Vice President and Chief of Staff, Director of Graduate Studies and Chair of Education, Director of the Crown Faculty Center, Interim Director of the Butler Center, and Associate Chair of Education. Please welcome President Manya Whitaker.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what I know will be an awesome event. And thank you so much for being here to celebrate the incredible work our students have put into their summer research and internship experiences. Today's symposium features short presentations, poster sessions, and conversations across the disciplines. It follows months of collaborative experiential learning in the lab, in the field, and on the job, and represents an essential part of a CC education. Research and internships are what we call high-impact practices, or HIPs. They require analytical thinking and active problem-solving, real-world application, and social interaction, all of which strengthen neural connections and improve long-term retention. Unlike passive memorization, HIPs challenge students to link new knowledge to existing cognitive frameworks in real time, making learning more meaningful and more enduring. The Summer Faculty Student Collaborative Research Program, or SCORE, enables students to learn alongside faculty mentors as they explore new techniques, models, and perspectives relevant to their fields. Students offer unique viewpoints that often lead to co-publication or presentation alongside their faculty mentors. These are opportunities reserved for graduate students or postdocs at larger institutions, but they're built into the undergraduate experience here at Colorado College. As an education professor, I had my first SCORE student in summer 2013. Along with a faculty colleague in the sociology department, I collaborated with an education major doing research on CC's diversity and equity initiatives long before our anti-racism commitment. I subsequently worked with political science, psychology, sociology, REMS, and economics and business majors on a variety of scholarly endeavors. Many of those students have long since graduated and are now in graduate school, working for nonprofits, or have started their own businesses. I remain in touch with former SCORE scholars as a mentor and a friend. When they ask me for letters of recommendation in pursuit of their next goals, I am always certain to discuss our work together through the SCORE program as formative to their professional development. A study by Gallup based on experiences of more than 30,000 college graduates found a strong link between elements of the college experience and long-term success. Specifically, the report found that students who had a caring faculty mentor had more fulfilling careers and were more likely to have a higher overall well-being. This is part of why we are so committed to collaborative research here at CC. Summer internships are another opportunity for students to engage in experiential learning. The Career Center's signature internships programs provide students with preparation for their internship, mentorship throughout, and reflection activities upon completion. In total, 120 students received summer internship funding awards in summer 2025, allowing them to participate in internships that often remain unpaid or underpaid. These experiences spanned 22 states and 12 countries. And still, over a quarter were based here in Colorado, making a local impact at places like the Rocky Mountain Wildlife Association, Pueblo Combined Courts, the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC, and the nonprofit Educating Children of Color. The top internship industries this year were social services, environmental science and policy, and healthcare. Students also participated in other Colorado College-sponsored internship programs, such as the Public Interest Fellowship Program, offering paid fellowships in Colorado's nonprofit sector. The Charlie Bloomstein Stewardship Internship was offered in partnership with the Nature Conservancy Colorado, with National Public Radio, and students intern with Colorado Public Radio as well. For many students, internships represent the first chance to apply their liberal arts education to solving real-world problems in a professional environment. They are immersing themselves in their fields of interest, they enhance their skill set, and learn and practice workplace norms and habits, while also expanding their professional networks. Throughout this process, they reflect on and sometimes change their career goals. They make informed decisions about the next steps in their journey and create a plan to get there. And they intentionally consider the impact their work will have on society and the communities of which they are a part, which is a central goal of the liberal arts. Before we move on to student presentations, I would like to add my thanks to CC's faculty and staff for your unwavering commitment to our students and the invaluable mentoring you all give. Thank you to Lisa Schwartz and Sarah Philman for their work with SCORE and the internship program over the summer and for organizing this special event. And congratulations to our students who invested time over the summer in their work. I know this is an experience that you will never forget, and I look forward to seeing the fruits of your labor today. Let's give our students a round of applause. I have the pleasure of welcoming our student presenters to the stage, and first up is Charlie Marks, class of 2026, who spent the summer as an intern at Vox Pop Films and Boxford Productions in Los Angeles. Come on down.
Thank you, Manya, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone. And thank you for being here today. My name is Charlie Marks. I am from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a senior here at Colorado College. I am majoring in film and media studies with a minor in environmental studies, and I have the pleasure to talk to you about my summer internship experience working at Vox Pop Films. But I want to start by talking about why I love film. Film as an art form has unequivocally changed the way I view and think about the world we live in. And being a student here at CC has allowed me to combine my passion for film with my passion for the environment, especially raising awareness about humans' relationship to the environment in the time of climate change, and telling stories about marginalized people and issues that would otherwise go unheard. This photo is from a documentary film shoot from 2 summers ago about the Ute Mountain Ute tribe and their fight for equitable water access in Southwest Colorado. Just recently, my worldview was changed after I attended the Telluride Film Festival Student Symposium, an intimate experience shared with 50 students from around the world. What was so beautiful about this experience was that we, college film students, were placed at the same level as world-renowned filmmakers. After watching the films, we got to have private conversations with the directors and actors about their work. And as the conversations continued over the weekend, it became clear that we all shared the same sentiment about telling truthful stories. That honesty is not objective, that there is no objective truth, but what is truth comes from the values and experience of the individual and the process of understanding one's own stories and hearing each other's. This sentiment is what fuels the growing urgency to make truthful art in a time of fear, a time of uncertainty, and a time of violence. Pictured here is the burning home of Kevin Cooley, taken by Kevin in January 2025 during the Eaton and Pacific Palisades fires in Los Angeles. Kevin is an artist and photographer who has dedicated his life to taking photos of wildfires and their ever-increasing presence in American life. The irony of this story is that Kevin and his family's home was destroyed in the January fires. But the story he wants to tell is one that creates a better understanding of the natural processes within ecosystems that humans have taken for granted, and to reimagine how we can live with nature, not against it. Currently, Kevin's story is being told in a short documentary by Lisa Hepner, pictured here on the left. Lisa is a documentary filmmaker from Los Angeles that I interned for this summer, with financial support from the Colorado College Summer Internship Funding's Awards Program. In this photo is Lisa directing, and holding the camera is Guy Mossman, Lisa's husband and CC Class of 95 alumni. Together, they run a documentary film production company called Vox Pop Films. If you were in this theater just this past Wednesday, you would have seen Guy's film, Speak. Together, Lisa and Guy offered me a glimpse into the work being done in independent filmmaking to tell stories like Kevin's. As an intern, I was faced with grunt work, like transcribing interviews to be easily digestible by Lisa and the editor. But this allowed me to read the interviews with Kevin and pick out quotes and blurbs about his philosophy on the environment that, as an environmentalist myself, I found crucial to telling Kevin's story from his point of view as an artist. While telling these stories can be incredibly gratifying, it also comes at a significant financial cost. Making films like the one about Kevin is expensive to shoot and even costlier to promote and get seen by general audiences. Working at Vox Pop, one of my duties as an intern was researching funding opportunities. I discovered that almost 100% of public funding has dried up, and the ripple effects for the independent artists have been and will be devastating for their livelihoods, as most funding in the United States comes from private donors. I realized that if your film is not guaranteed to turn a profit, the film often won't get financed. So where do I go from here? My experience interning for documentary filmmakers like Guy and Lisa gave me the knowledge and confidence to start production on a documentary that takes me back to my home state of Georgia and tells the story about a decades-long fight to protect, of all things, a swamp. The Okefenokee Swamp is the largest blackwater wetland ecosystem in North America and is home to over 1,000 species of plants and animals. It sequesters over 510 million tons of CO2 equivalent, making it an enormously important natural carbon sink. It is a cultural touchstone as the ancestral home of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and having served as a literal refuge for the African American community during segregation. And the ecotourism it supports makes it a critical engine for the local economy. But over the last 30 years, it has been threatened by proposed titanium strip mining along its boundary, which scientists say could greatly damage the ecosystem. That threat has galvanized an incredibly diverse coalition of interest groups that have risen up in opposition, including local and indigenous communities, conservation groups, scientists, students, business owners, faith leaders, shareholder advocates, and politicians. Their message is this: mining next to Georgia's greatest natural treasure is a terrible idea, and it needs to be stopped. I plan to raise money this fall to shoot the film over the course of the year and shed new light on a common story of corporate greed being prioritized over intrinsic ecological value. While making this documentary, I am also working on writing and directing my thesis film with the Film and Media Studies Department, which will premiere here with my peers' films in Celeste in April. If you are interested in supporting the arts, please come visit us in the film department and meet some of the brilliant filmmakers that are telling stories that can change the world. No matter how scary change can be, change reveals the beauty within ourselves. And with help from artists, you can figure out where to look. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Allison Pena,
My name is Chen Xingxiang.
and today we're here to answer the question, is your dorm room making you think less clearly? The impact of CO2 on cognition and stress biomarkers. For the past academic school year, 2,239 students were enrolled at Colorado College. Of those, 70% of them lived on campus. Part of the reality of being an undergraduate student at a college is oftentimes being forced to live in a room with 3 or more people. At Colorado College, this term is coined the forced triple. From these photos, we can see how uncomfortable, hot, and crowded these rooms look. I think we can all agree that these environments are just unlivable.
Before we start to talk about our own research, we'd like to start by appreciating some previous researches did by Dr. Meyer and the other CC students. First, one student set monitors in a hot yoga classroom to see if a room is safe in fire considerations, while the CO2 level also considered to be healthy for human bodies. Secondly, some other student researchers designed a cognitive test and asked the participant to do after sleeping overnight to see whether sleeping in high and accumulated CO2 environment will affect their cognition state.
Short-term effects of high CO2 levels include headaches, reduced cognition, dizziness, fatigue, and memory loss. Unfortunately, all of these health risks can ultimately lead to poor academic performance, which is actually the focus of our experiment.
With all those motivations, we designed our research through a 2-month project within 5 days, including 2 aspects of testing, cognition level and stress biomarkers, to simulate the situation that when students sleep over a night for about 8 hours in a forced room, will the CO2 affect their academic performances. Here, we set the baseline of our research using one test that opened the window of the room to measure the normal CO2 level. As the diagram shows, the concentration stables around 600 ppm, that means parts per million. To give you guys an idea about the settings of the room we used for the study, it is a 6 times 4.5 times 2 cubic meter room. We put 4 monitors in the room showing by the diamonds. They are put at different corners of the room considering the leakage, because some are inside of the room and some are by the window or door. The 2 blue circles represent the 2 participants who sat as far apart as possible in the room to even the CO2 level.
To give everyone an idea of the schedule that we followed, on days 1 and 2, there was 1 person in the room during the 6-hour period. On day 1, the window was closed, while on day 2, the window was open. From days 3 through 5, there were 2 people in the room. We had 2 people in the room to imitate the environment of a forced triple, and the windows were closed on all 3 days. These images model a few of the cognitive tests performed after sitting in a test room for the 6-hour period. On the left, we have the multiple objective tracking test. This test worked by tracking the colored shape at various speeds and ultimately deciding which one it would be when they were all the same color at the end. This test measured one's tracking ability as increased CO2 levels are known to impair vision. On the right, we have the enumeration test. The enumeration test worked by counting the number of dots on the screen after being displayed for 0.6 seconds. This tracked memory as increased levels of CO2 are known to impact short-term memory.
Now we talk about the biomarkers. Biomarkers are signals of some changes of body reactions that can be easily presented with data. Cortisol, as an important biomarker, is used here to track the stress level of the participants. After being triggered by the stress level in the brain, the adrenal gland is stimulated and cortisol is secreted in salivary gland. This has a slower hormonal pathway.
On the other hand, alpha amylase is an enzyme that is secreted in response to acute stress by our body's built-in flight or fight response, the sympathetic nervous system. It is released by our salivary glands, which makes collecting saliva perfect for our experiment.
Take a look at this diagram. It shows when one single person stayed in a closed room for 8 hours. It only took 2 hours for the concentration to go up to 1,200 ppm. There are 4 curves with different colors in the diagram because they are monitored at different corners of the room. And some have more bumps than the others because they are put next to the window or door and has the disturbed CO2 environment. This diagram shows the combined CO2 concentration curves. The 3 red lines showing when 2 people stayed in a closed room for 8 hours. The concentration can go up to more than 2,000 ppm, which is double the value of when one single person stayed in the same room, showing by the orange line. And the baseline experiment we did is showing by the green line at the bottom.
Over the course of days 1 through 3, we see an increase of alpha amylase levels as evident through our graph. This shows that as CO2 levels increase, so do alpha amylase levels, indicating our bodies are experiencing acute stress at lower, higher concentrations of CO2. On the other hand, we see the exact opposite thing occur from days 4 through 5, also evident through our graph. We see a decrease in alpha amylase levels. We're not too sure why we see this, but we would love to do further research to investigate this finding.
The cortisol has the same trend. But the most obvious difference between cortisol and alpha amylase is that the concentration for cortisol only ranges from 0.3 to 0.6. That's much lower than the concentration for alpha amylase. However, that makes total sense because cortisol has a slower hormonal pathway and it has fewer time for the concentration to accumulate.
This diagram shows a side-by-side comparison of alpha amylase and cortisol levels. As I mentioned before, days 1 through 3 show an increase in both biomarkers, while days 4 and 5 show a decrease. As I previously mentioned, we're not too sure why we see a decrease, but a possible theory is that our bodies adapt to experiencing acute stress as a result of prolonged CO2 exposure, showing a possible model of adaptation within humans. We loved learning throughout our experiment, and we would continue to love learning more by including more participants in future studies, doing the same experiment in different buildings and with different conditions, and investigating why concentrations decrease after 2,000 parts per million of CO2 exposure. We would like to thank Dr. Sally Meyer, the Colorado College Chemistry and Biochemistry Department, the Dean's Office, the Bellin Fund, and the Speaking Center.
We'd also like to thank some previous researchers who inspired and initiated our research. They are Liv Panels, Caroline Bay, Grace Nguyen, and all the other CC students who allowed us to measure and monitor CO2 in their rooms.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
We'll be standing by our poster in session 2 outside, so please come to talk to us if you want to know more about our project.
Therefore, this is a change, and what it might mean for Arctic communities. The Arctic has a very brief growing season. The year is dominated by long, dark winters, and the tundra briefly bursts into life. As temperatures rise, this narrowed window is shifting. Plants might flower earlier, insects might emerge at different times, and these timelines may no longer align. This mismatch could disrupt plant-pollinator interactions, which are essential for plant reproduction and ecosystem health. Successful pollination yields fruits, such as berries. These are critical food sources for animals, such as migratory birds, bears, voles, and other mammals, including humans. If the availability of these food sources shift in a warming climate, the ecosystem could be at risk. Our research is part of a long-term ecological monitoring effort called the International Tundra Experiment. This is a collaboration of scientists from all over the world, focusing on the impacts of global warming in the Arctic. There are many sites of study which can be seen on this world map. Because of this, we are able to see both the long-term patterns that are emerging and the nuances of interannual variation. Our sites are located in the low Arctic at Tulik Field Station, a remote site about a 10-hour drive north of Fairbanks. I would like to acknowledge that our sites are located on the ancestral grounds of the Nunamiut and the grounds of the Gwich'in and Koyukuk and Inupiaq peoples. We recognize and are grateful for the indigenous people who inhabit and steward the land. To understand how warming affects pollination, we use devices called open-top chambers. Through passive warming, open-top chambers make our plots up to 2.2 degrees Celsius warmer than our control plots, which do not have any open-top chambers. Across both our warmed and unwarmed plots, we monitor a range of different measurements to gain insight into plant-pollinator interactions. Firstly, we look at an aspect called phenology, which is the timing of flowering, or when the flower is available for pollination and reproduction. We keep track of which plants are flowering when in every single one of our 128 plots. We also monitor the quantity and the quality, or the sucrose concentration, of nectar from 3 species: bearberry, lingonberry, and bog blueberry. This is a very meticulous process. The flowers we're working with are about half the size of your pinky fingernail, and we probe the nectaries of those flowers with a super small micropipette. Capillary action sucks up the nectar into these tiny tubes. Often we're extracting fractions of microliters of liquid from these flowers. We then use a device called a refractometer, which I'm using in the middle photo here, to analyze the sucrose concentration. This season, we measured over 2,700 flowers for nectar data. Definitely a tedious process, but also very rewarding. A third aspect that we monitor is insect visitation. This consists of visitor watches, in which we sit and stare at a plot for 10 minutes at a time, noting any insects that contact the sexual reproductive parts of the flowers in the plot. We then identify those insects by site, down to order. So, for example, our Hymenoptera, our bees and wasps, Lepidoptera, our moths and butterflies, and Diptera, our flies and mosquitoes. This season, we conducted 424 watches, which, if you do the math, is indeed over 70 hours of watching plots. However, it was exciting to see patterns of visitation emerge throughout the season. I will admit, I got bored sometimes. When I was probing the 90th flower of the morning, or when I was onto my second hour of visitor watches with only 1 or 2 flies for company, I got bored. It is easy to get lost in the repetitive nature of fieldwork, in the monotony of thousands of standardized measurements and data points. But all those tiny measurements are necessary, and they add up to a much bigger story. So far, we are seeing very nuanced species-specific responses to the warming treatment. There's a lot of information in this figure, but overall, it's showing that some of these species, like Arcturus alpina or bearberry, had altered timing and duration of flowering with the warmed treatment in 2019, while others, like Carex bigelowii or Bigelow's sedge, did not have any difference between warmed and unwarmed plots. Some species may produce more flowers and flower for longer, while others are not affected at all. Similarly, nectar quantity and quality changes under warming for some species. For example, in 2019, bog blueberry nectar quantity significantly increased in warmed plots, but quality did not change. Nectar is a reward for pollinators, so this may impact where pollinators choose to forage. We most commonly saw flies during our visitor watches, but bumblebees were the more effective pollinators. They carried significantly more pollen grains on their bodies, as you can see in this graph here. You can also see their efficiency in this photo of a bumblebee on a willow. All of that yellow on the body is pollen. This summer, I fell in love with the Arctic, even despite the fact that I had 150 mosquito bites at one point. This summer helped me grow as a scientist. I was able to connect with researchers from all over the world, from Russia to a CC alum. I was able to practice outreach by teaching middle school students who visited the station. I grew both in skills and in confidence, and for the first time, I felt like I was a meaningful part of the scientific community. I first heard about this opportunity when I was a freshman in Dr. Corson's Biology of Plants class. Back then, I was unsure of my place at CC, or to put it in ecological terms, my niche. When she talked about her research in the Arctic, I had this little thought at the back of my mind that maybe that could be me, and my dream came true. This summer, I fell in love with the Arctic, and I fell in love with ecological research. I have been so grateful to have this opportunity, and I am so excited to continue my journey as an ecologist. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm excited to be here with you today sharing a little bit about what I got up to this summer, as well as continue on the Arctic theme that Sabrina has just started for us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ashley Entwistle. I am a senior history political science major and environmental studies minor here at Colorado College. This past summer, thanks to the CC Career Internship funding, as well as funding from the Political Science Department, I had the incredible opportunity to be a research intern with the Arctic Center, an international interdisciplinary research hub located in Rovaniemi, Finland. Rovaniemi is the capital of Lapland. It is also the official hometown of Santa Claus. So if Santa shows up behind me in just a couple of moments, you know why. There, I worked with the Arctic International Relations team for a total of 2 months. How did I wind up there? Last fall, I had the opportunity to join a group of CC students as a part of an ethnographic research team at the UN Climate Change Conference in Baku, Azerbaijan. There, I studied Arctic state engagement and representation at the conference. When I'm talking about the Arctic states, I'm referring to the 8 countries with territories above the Arctic Circle, including Iceland, Denmark through Greenland, Finland, Sweden, Norway, US, Canada, and Russia. There, I talked to Arctic constituencies, and I met somebody from the Arctic Center who referred me to the lady who I ended up working with this summer. Never underestimate the power of an email. I came out of the conference with a paper entitled Toward the End of Arctic Exceptionalism, Navigating the Intersection Between Geopolitics, Climate, and Indigenous Rights at COP29. A perfect transition into why, when so much is going on politically throughout the rest of the world, I have looked north for my international relations research. The answer lies at the intersection of international relations and environmental studies, 2 fields that converge in the most fascinating of ways in the Arctic region, or at least I think so. As global warming accelerates, Sabrina mentioned in her presentation, it's happening 4 times faster than the global average in the Arctic region. New prospects are opening up for resource extraction. The Arctic Ocean is ice-free for longer than it has ever been before, opening up opportunities for shipping. It is becoming a new place for strategic global power competition, specifically between countries like the US, Russia, and China, which I'll get into in just a second. I talked about this term, Arctic exceptionalism, or I mentioned it briefly. It was coined in the wake of the Cold War, this notion that despite political tensions that may be going on between countries' governments that are Arctic states, when you cross the Arctic Circle line, heads a little bit north, it's a zone of science diplomacy. It's a zone of shared knowledge, collaboration, working together towards a specific goal. After Russia invaded Ukraine, this idea went by the wayside. Now, Arctic states have refused to engage with Russia on Arctic policy matters, and in turn, Russia has looked south towards increased Arctic involvement from other countries, including but not limited to China. So, when I was at the Arctic Center, I had a wide range of tasks. I completed 2 in-depth literature reviews. I edited and revised a paper on transboundary biodiversity protection in the tri-border region between Finland, Sweden, and Norway. I also did the occasional unglamorous intern tasks, as I'm sure we all did. My main project, however, focused on the evolving geopolitical consequences of deep sea mining in the Arctic region. I looked at how and how not international documents, such as the UN Convention of the Law on the Sea, regulated deep sea mining in the region. I asked questions like what happens when you add a third-party actor who may not have territorial claims into the Arctic into the picture? The lady that I worked with was head of the international relations team, yes, but her main focus, which initially drew me to her work, was her focus on China's increasing role in Arctic affairs. I've lived in Singapore for the majority of my life, as well as learned Mandarin for most of the time that I was there. Together with the lady who I worked under, we translated peer-reviewed articles, newsletters, etc., to put together a literature review. I learned more than I could ever imagine, and I'm so excited to continue doing this research in the year to come. So, what's next? A question in which so many of us in the audience, especially seniors here, are probably wondering. Some of us might get excited by it, some of us may be dreading it. I know I'm the latter. I'm not entirely sure what next year holds for me. But in the meantime, this year, I have the opportunity to be a research intern with the Arctic Institute Center for Circumpolar Security Studies, located in Washington, D.C. I distill weekly news from geopolitical news, environmental news, all happening in the Arctic into a newsletter that is circulated to individuals across 90 countries. I'm so excited to continue to see what this work holds in the year to come. Besides that, I'm actively thinking of ways in which I can live intentionally and contribute meaningfully to this planet that we live in the midst of intense environmental and political challenges that we face. I'm not entirely sure where this will take me, but I'm excited to continue exploring the ways in which my interests overlap in the near future. Thank you so much, and I'm excited to continue chatting with all of you afterwards.
I study history at Colorado College, and when I go to class in Palmer Hall across the quad, I walk into the department lobby to grab a cup of coffee and a sweet treat. And as I walk in, facing me against the wall is a book. It's titled History of Men's Soccer at Colorado College. Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Cassette, and I'm a senior history major here to talk to you about my summer research. The last issue of The Catalyst, Block 1, Week 3, has a headline on the front page. It's titled, The 75th Anniversary of Men's Soccer at Colorado College. But this year also marks another milestone in CC athletics. It marks the 50th anniversary of women's soccer at the school. My research, under the leadership and guidance of Jamal Ratchford, is funded by the Student Faculty Collaborative Grant, is to write the first book honoring women's soccer at CC, to tell the incredible stories of our female legends and to put it into print. And, thank you. And what better place to find old documents and records pertaining to CC women's soccer is there than the archives, the very place where our school chronicles our past. And it's an incredible story that needs to be told. When the team was founded in the spring of 1975, 50 years ago, there was no professional league. There was no serious support for women's sports or athletics. There was also no intercollegiate national championship. Intercollegiate soccer was a male space until women's soccer came along in 1975. Momentum came when CC hosted the first national championship in 1981. The very concept was drawn up, organized, planned, and executed by the team's first coach, Coach Steve Paul, his staff, and his team. From that point on, CC quickly rose to prominence, becoming one of the most well-renowned teams in the country, continuously ranked as the second best team, only behind UNC Chapel Hill. And much like the silences that we see on that front, we see in the archives, the very place that we organize and draw our sources from. In dealing with archives, the census taker is like the censor. Every item in the archives inventory has to be created, but also deemed worthy to be saved. And in the case of women's athletics, most archivists did not care about women's sports. And that's notably true about soccer at CC. And it's precisely one of the key problems that the CC Women's Soccer Project aims to address. When we use resources in the archives, we acknowledge that they are limited and imperfect, but to that aim, we've turned to oral history. We've begun a process of interviewing the legends of our CC Women's Soccer program to hear their stories and to get those sources that we need in order to write. And those sources have been immensely helpful. One of the fascinating things that Jamal Ratchford does with his sports and society classes is that he sends his students into the archives to learn how to become a historian, to take the sources, the photographs, the documents, to construct a narrative, to write a history. And that's why we're writing this book. To fill the silences, to honor the legends, and to ensure that in 25 years, when the Catalyst marks the 75th anniversary of women's soccer, that sitting in the history department lobby is a book titled History of Women's Soccer at Colorado College. Special thanks to Jamal Ratchford, who's the whole reason that this project exists, to Sarah Hinkle, to my peers, to the Speaking Center, to Sarah Philman, Leisha Schwartz, and finally, to all the women's soccer players. You matter. Your footprint exists. Your stories will be told. Thank you.
Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. This is the Special Olympics athlete oath, recited before every event. It is more than a tradition uttered before competitions, but a way of life. It embodies the core values of Special Olympics: courage, resilience, and joy. Hello, my name is Chloe Johnson. I'm a sophomore studying political science and an aspiring disability rights lawyer. This summer, I had the incredible opportunity to intern with the CEO of Special Olympics Colorado, Megan Scremin, where I didn't just hear the words of the athlete oath. I witnessed them in action, alive in the staff members present in the office, bringing their passion and patience, and every athlete who proudly competed in games, events, and camps, and the amazing community I worked alongside. When we think of Special Olympics, we think of sports. But in reality, Special Olympics is a nonprofit organization that is spearheading a social movement that not only impacts our very own Colorado Springs community, but our state, country, and world. All 50 United States have Special Olympics networking programs. 190 countries work to spread the mission daily, and over 6 million athletes participate in Special Olympics programming worldwide. Beyond sports, Special Olympics provides health programming, leadership development, and is leading the charge in changing school cultures through anti-bullying programs. Special Olympics Colorado offers year-round sports training and competitions for children and adults with intellectual disabilities, aiming to develop physical fitness, courage, and joy while promoting inclusion and community. It also provides opportunities for individuals without intellectual disabilities, unified partners, introducing them to the community, helping them build communication skills, and offering them opportunities to participate in sports that they might not otherwise get to experience. Special Olympics programming begins with young athletes from age 2 all the way through adulthood. One of the highlights of my internship was the State Summer Games. 1,000 athletes and families, 300 plus volunteers gathered in Grand Junction for a weekend of joy and competition. The Olympic Town Plaza, which I planned and executed, was buzzing with food, music, games, and a celebration of belonging. From swimming to soccer, powerlifting to track and field, every event highlighted not only athletic skill, but resilience of the athletes. The games weren't just about medals. They created a statewide impact on health, confidence, friendships, and community. And here's something that surprised me. Special Olympics Colorado is the #1 healthcare provider for individuals with intellectual disabilities statewide. Through our Healthy Athletes programming, participants receive audiology exams, dental screenings, vision checks, podiatry support, and general sports physicals. Through our mental health programming, Strong Minds, athletes build coping skills for stress and emotions. This is health in the fullest sense: mind, body, and community. Another meaningful experience during my internship was with young people. At Young Athletes Camp, kids with and without intellectual disabilities, as young as 2, learn to run, jump, and play unified sports together in a safe and inclusive environment. These kids showed me resilience. They fall, they laugh, they get back up again, and they keep going. They serve as a reminder to all of us that the future truly is unified. But a movement isn't built on youth, sports, and health programs alone. It happens behind the scenes. My internship taught me just how essential the nonprofit side is. Grant writing sounded daunting at first, but I quickly realized that it funds the heart of everything: competitions, health screenings, and athlete leadership programs. Special Olympics Colorado enrolled me in a grant writing class, trusting me to write over 25 grants. I applied for several Walmart Spark Good community grants and was able to bring in over $15,000. Funds that directly impact athlete opportunities and expand programming. Fundraising, silent auctions, and donor calls taught me how to turn community generosity into opportunity. And event planning, coordinating volunteers, logistics, and details reminded me that inclusion doesn't just happen. It takes careful work. And when that hard work pays off, you see it come to life in moments of celebration, like when I marched in the Denver Pride Parade with Special Olympics Colorado. The energy, the joy, the rainbow of inclusion, it was unforgettable. And what I witnessed again and again was joy as a form of resistance. Smiles, laughter, and even high fives are powerful tools for breaking down the harmful stigma that surrounds individuals with intellectual disabilities. And that's what inclusion truly means. It's not abstract, it's not charity. Inclusion is something you do with someone, not for someone, and it transforms both lives. So when I think back to the words of the athlete oath, "Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt," I realize that this is so much bigger than sports. It's a call to all of us to choose courage, to choose resilience, to choose inclusion and joy, because when we do, we all win. Thank you.
Picture this. You're on the phone with someone you've never met before, and she's crying, sobbing so hard you can barely make out her words. All you can do is sit there with the receiver pressed against your ear. You can't hand her a tissue. You can't soften the silence. All you can do is listen. That was me this past summer as an investigative intern with the Colorado State Public Defender in Boulder, Colorado. Good afternoon. My name is Jasmine Liu, and I am a junior at Colorado College studying economics and political science. This past summer, I had the really incredible opportunity to step inside the criminal justice system in a way I never had before. After independently seeking out an internship with the Colorado State Public Defender, I was fortunate enough to make it happen thanks to funding from the Career Center. I interned with the Colorado State Public Defender, which is an organization that protects the rights of people accused of crimes who cannot afford an attorney. It's a mission that is rooted in the US Constitution, and at the Public Defender, that commitment is carried out through legal representation that is not only effective, but also zealous and compassionate. Now, to give you a bit of context, every legal defense team is made up of attorneys, paralegals, investigators, and social workers. Everyone talks a lot about the attorneys. The attorneys are the ones in the courtrooms delivering passionate arguments and sharp cross-examinations. We often think about the attorneys if we picture a criminal case. But what most people don't see, and what I want to shine a light on tonight, is the work of the investigators. This summer, I learned that so much of the story actually begins long before anyone ever steps foot in court. Much of the story begins with the investigators. Now, investigators are essentially fact finders. Investigators gather details and information to support a client's case. Investigators may conduct witness interviews, serve subpoenas, photograph evidence, and track down records. My work this summer was incredibly hands-on. Working side by side with seasoned investigators, I managed my very own misdemeanor caseload. In those cases, I wasn't just an intern, I was the only investigator on the case. So that meant that it was my responsibility to gather details that could dictate the case of someone's life. Now, I can't share every detail of the cases that I worked on this summer because of confidentiality reasons. But what I can share are the lessons I learned that really shaped the way I see justice today. And above all, I learned that justice begins with listening. That lesson first hit me when I conducted my very first witness interview. I was working on a misdemeanor DUI case, and I was interviewing the boy who had called 911. I prepared for the interview the way I thought you were supposed to, poring over the police reports, listening to the 911 recordings, and writing out these really specific and detailed questions. Before I went in for the interview, I asked my supervisor for her advice. She just looked at me and she told me that there are no strategies. Just ask questions, just listen. So I did. I expected something formal. A sit-down conversation, a notepad, maybe some really intense eye contact. But instead, we stood on the witness's driveway. At one point, he laughed and he told me that I had scored a really cool internship. And at that point, staring up through the hot afternoon sun to smile up at him, I realized that investigating isn't about scripted questions. It's about something very human. Having a conversation. That same type of presence mattered again later in my internship when I interviewed a different witness. This witness had said something that seemed almost like an afterthought, something she might not have elaborated on if I hadn't paused and asked her a simple follow-up question. Can you tell me more about that? That one question opened up a world of details that entirely reshaped how the defense understood what had happened. I learned then that investigating isn't about writing down what's been said, but it's also about listening closely enough to hear what hasn't been said yet. Finally, listening mattered most in the moments when I was scared. I'll admit, when I walked into the Boulder County Jail, escorted by armed guards to meet a client facing homicide charges, I was scared. But as soon as that client shook my hand and asked for my name and cracked more than a few jokes, I realized that my fear was rooted in assumptions. And listening had turned him back into a person. When I was interviewing for this internship, I asked the chief investigator what she considers to be the most important skill an intern can have. Her answer was one word: compassion. She said everything else can be taught. Now, I don't plan to go into criminal defense. My interests lie at the intersection of law and economics. But this summer, I learned that the foundation is the same no matter where you go. Justice begins with listening. At the Colorado State Public Defender, investigators turn scattered facts into stories. But you don't need to be an investigator to do that. All of us are constantly piecing together stories about the people around us. Our friends, our colleagues, even strangers. The question is whether we're willing to pause long enough to ask, can you tell me more about that? That, to me, is what justice looks like. And not just in the courtroom, but in everyday life. Thank you. Wow. That was incredible, students. Does anyone else get chills? Maybe a little emotional? That was really excellent. You should be so proud of yourselves. And this was just a small window into the many stories of students. And so a quick announcement, students, if you are presenting in session number 1, you are free to go to the main space and get set up. Thank you for being here. Guests, our oral presenters will be on the stage if you'd like to come up and ask any questions. They were amazing. We encourage you to join us after in the main space for 2 30-minute sessions where our students will be showcasing their research and internship experiences, and they're ready for your questions. Can we give another round of applause for these amazing And thank you all for being here, families and friends. I hope you have a great weekend and enjoy the symposium.
We're on the record. We're recording. We're live.
Yeah, we're live. I'm Mayor Skepper. There's some great CC students. We've done some very cool things.